as we start going, you're going to have questions as we start getting into this, just to understand, jot them down, get them into the chat box. We're going to try and answer as many questions as possible. I do want to give you the caveat on this. This presentation is 1 hour, but what we did was, this is boiled down to almost a month of training, boiled down into 1 hour. So it's going to be extremely high level, and I'm going to run you through some of these things. And some of them may be a head scratcher, some of them may seem obvious to you, but get those questions in. The biggest takeaway at the end of the day is understanding this. The SBDC came to our firm and said, listen, you're doing this for businesses out there. Why can't we do this for small business? And we said, makes perfect sense. So taking advantage of programs like this, and I will tell you without a doubt, there is no other program out there like this for free. Absolutely. So again, take that for what it's worth, try to understand, wrap your arms around the value on that side. But the follow on, or what I really want to speak to, is we talked about engagement. What we define as a firm when we start engaging with, especially a small business, is the amount of return engagement that we see. If we assign you to do something, if we tell you, hey, you've got to call these particular people, you've got to get this particular thing done, we want to see that there's some actual reciprocation, right? So at the end of the day, this is what I tell small business clients. The more I see you working, the more work you're going to get from us. And in this program, specifically, when the difference between a regular training program and this particular program, specifically at the University of Laverne, the SBDC, is understanding that you're going to have an entire business development team behind you, mining the actual opportunities, walking you through the actual proposal production, making you understand what cost analysis is, all the way to contract award, and understanding what the management, what the expectation of the management is going to be. So again, a lot of work out there, but understand in this program, we really want to be able to take you by the hand and lead you down the path. Now, with that being said, there's no guarantee of any contracts with this in this program, but we will lead you down the path. And if at some point, whatever your core competency is, we may tell you, listen, here's the research, here's the spend, maybe this isn't a viable option for you. Maybe government contracting isn't where you should be. And we're going to be upfront and honest with you about that from the get-go. So I give all those tidbits of information, and what I really want you to take away is how valuable this type of program is. So this is our first kickoff webinar for this program, so we're just getting started. We actually administered a couple other programs that are extremely successful. We're direct contractors for Southern California Edison, a couple other agencies specifically to help some of their internal contractors on that side. And these are some of the same things that we do on that side. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about strategy. So we're going to talk about a couple different avenues in government contracting. When I use the terminology government contracting, we're talking about 3 specific lanes: federal contracting, state contracting, and utility contracting. Not to say that municipalities and counties aren't viable targets as well, but for the sake of conversations, we're going to talk about federal and state contracting right now in this particular context for this presentation. So with that being said, if you're looking at the screen and you see the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulations, the FAR is the Bible of federal contracting. This is what you have to have a grasp of in general to understand procurement methods and procurement policy and procedures. Now, here's the caveat. I don't want you to Google the FAR and try to understand the entire FAR, because you won't do it, because it's constantly being updated, but have some general knowledge of the FAR. So I've got some parts in the FAR. They're not sections, they're called parts. Don't ask me why, it's a federal process, but there are parts. So there's a couple parts that I want you to at least be familiar with as you start looking at federal procurement. The first is Part 19, set aside acquisitions. Now, you have all heard, even if you have just a general understanding of government contracting, you have all heard, well, it's a set aside contract. What is that specifically? And I can tell you that specifically within the federal procurement, set-aside contracts are the only. There's one caveat I'm going to talk about real quick, or one other situation, but for the most part, set-aside contracts are a federal process where a specific contract can only be bid on by whatever the designation is. Let's say it's a woman-owned business. Let's say it's small business, service-disabled veteran business, you know, whatever it is, hub zone, 8A. There's a lot of different certifications on that side. But that procurement can only be sought after, can only be proposed on unless you have that particular designation. And we can get into how to get those set aside. And I'll briefly go over that once we talk about some of the marketing things. But understand Part 19 in the FAR is going to talk about the set aside acquisitions and how that process is actually laid out. The next part is Part 52, small business subcontracting plans. I want you to become familiar with Part 52 in the context of this. For the most part, if you have no past performance, or let's say you're just getting started, you're typically going to look at large prime contractors as your targets. We're going to say, well, let's say I'm a small carpeting firm and I can't handle a 5-story carpet, a 5-story building, you know, 200 rooms, whatever the case is. And I don't have bonding, or I don't have specific insurance that they're looking for. I can't handle the management of that. So obviously, maybe I'm going to look at a large prime contractor as a subcontractor. So understand, in federal procurement, there are small business subcontracting plans, meaning this: when that prime contractor signs a contract with the federal government, they have specific vendors, specific contractors that they've listed in that proposal. Now, the disconnect is this: some of you may have received emails, phone calls from some large prime contractor that says, hey, you're a woman-owned business, you're a minority-owned business, we want to do work with you because we need your certification. You get excited, pop the champagne corks and say, okay, let's go ahead and go. Let me send you a bid. Here's my pricing, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, it's a black hole. No phone calls get answered, you're emailing, nothing, crickets, right? And you go, what happened to this thing? I don't understand where it's at. The strategy specifically in understanding this part is understanding what the process is. At the end of the day, if you don't understand the process, then it's shame on you, right? Because this is business at some point. Now, let's say you can complain all you want that that prime took advantage of you, but if you don't understand the process and you don't understand what your rights are on that side, then it's really shame on you, right? And at the end of the day, that's not the way it's supposed to happen. And there are good prime contractors out there and there are bad prime contractors, just like anything else out there. But when you are armed with the knowledge of what they're supposed to do and what that procurement is written out to actually contain, then you're 100% bulletproof, where you say, okay, I know exactly what you're supposed to do. I was submitted on this particular contract. Why aren't we being utilized? Is there any documentation saying why we're not being utilized? And what is going on in the management of this contract? Part 52 is going to somewhat touch on that and understanding that. So as we roll on in federal procurement, understand the procurement policy, finding the target. So the next step is, okay, how do I conduct the research? How do I know who my target is? One of the things, here's a small marketing point where we see, and this doesn't only include small business, medium to large business does this at some point, where you ask them, well, listen, you want to be a government contractor, so who's your target? And the absolute worst answer to give to that question is everybody. Everybody in the federal government is my target. When you tell me that, or you tell somebody who understands procurement on the federal level, what you've done is you've diminished your position, because what you're telling somebody is you don't really understand the market that you're trying to get into. So specifically, when you look at federal procurement, you try to guess, well, how many, there's a bunch of different agencies out there. There's Department of Defense agencies, Homeland Security, the VA, you know, whatever they are. You start thinking, well, what is there, 50, 75 different departments? There's actually 1,200 different departments on the federal government side. And some of these agencies you've never heard of, whether it's a Department of Forestry, Department of Interior, sub-departments on there on the procurement side. understanding how do we get to the target. So when you look at the slide, specifically, this is how you're going to get to the target. And in the program, I give you the web links here, but I'm just going to talk through them briefly specifically. So the very first step, you're going to identify your NAICS codes, North American Industrial Classification System. This is the driver or the identifier in the federal government side. Many of you may know what your NAICS codes are at this point, but what I would challenge you to do is to make sure not only that you have a primary NAICS code, but you have some secondary codes as well. For a small business, you should come up with a number somewhere between 3 to 5 codes, because what's going to happen in your research, those codes are going to expand out your research and try to understand exactly what the spend is. So the next step, next bullet, you see it says see the spend. USAspending.gov is a government website that shows you exactly what the spend is for your core competency. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take those NAICS codes, and when you conduct the research on USA Spending, it's going to show you exactly what the spend is for that. Now, here's the caveat. When you start looking at NAICS codes and you start looking at definitions, there may be a definition that doesn't quite fit exactly what you do. For the most part, the definition is going to be a little bit larger scope for exactly what your core competency. Let's say you're a concrete layer, but you don't do finishing work, you don't do tilt up, you don't do concrete base, whatever the case is, you're going to find that the definitions on the NAICS side are a little more broad than what your typical understanding of what your typical core competency is. So just understand that this is what we're doing here in this research. It's giving you a baseline. All it's doing is giving you the information or the data to justify designating a target. Hopefully that makes sense. So in the See the Spend, you're going to see USA Spending. When you go there, you're going to utilize your NAICS codes, primary and secondaries. You're going to see what that spend is. The good thing about this site is it's going to break it down for you geographically. So it's got a little US map, and it's going to show you. Maybe it's a San Diego area that is spend heavy for where you're at, or maybe it's Utah, or maybe it's Texas, whatever it is. It's going to show you where those contracts are at. The good thing with this particular tool, it's going to show those contracts. It's going to have the contract number, and it's going to list the actual prime contractor. Now, remember I talked about in the very first slide, maybe you've designated yourself as a subcontractor. Maybe you've said, okay, I've looked at this federal procurement side, and this is too much for me. There's no way that I have the business acumen to get this done. I'm afraid of it. I just don't want to do it. The good thing about this is going to identify who those prime contractors are. So that gives you a starting point, right? Where you say, okay, I've never heard of this prime contractor, but what do you know? They closed, $500 million in my core competency. This is somebody that I've got to contact. Maybe I get in their diversity department, or I look at their small business advocate, whatever the case may be. This is where you're going to designate some targets, right? Where you say, okay, now at least I have a direction. It's not the entire ball of wax that I'm looking at on the federal government side. So this is where we're narrowing down specific targets. And then the third step we have here is registering with the federal government, sam.gov. If you've never been on sam.gov as of yet, or you're not registered, it's not too bad of a registration, meaning it's not extremely time consuming. You should be able to register on sam.gov with a pretty good amount of ease and not have a ton of problems on that side. The one thing that I would suggest, if you're not familiar with sam.gov at all and you're not registered specifically on sam.gov, when you go to that website, there's a tutorial and it's a video. Watch the video, read the PDF, whatever it is, the steps and some best practices, at least have an idea of what you're doing on that side. It helps, the tutorial, it's very basic, but it helps because one of the things you're going to have to understand on the government side are the devil is in the details. One small detail that is missed, especially within a registration or all the way to submitting invoices, one small detail that is missed, you typically go down a black hole where you're in the middle of space somewhere going, I don't understand why I'm not getting this information. Why is this not occurring? I've spoken to the help desk 4 times and it may just be a small mistake. that is a process on the government side that is just a necessary evil. So attention to detail, especially in the registration, certifications, these type of things on that side. So that's what it is basically on the federal government side. Now I know we're going to talk about marketing. I'm going to talk about state procurement real quick. Then we're going to talk about marketing. We're going to get into proposal production and then project management and roll it up. So as you have questions with federal procurement, make sure you're typing them out. No matter what the questions are, we've got a couple consultants on the Zoom as well. They're going to be fielding those questions, and we'll try to answer them at the end. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to go to the state of California. So I've got two websites here that are really research tools, having an understanding of what you're getting into for the state of California. So let me give you some broad strokes, state of California. Nowhere else in the union, you know, Sean talked about that I'm the chair for CalVet, and it's the chair for the Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise within the state of California. So basically all procurement that comes through the state of California, on that particular committee, we're looking at a lot of that procurement that's coming out in the forecast and, you know, what have you on that side. In the past, I sat on the governor's small business committee. Just a ton of procurement and opportunities coming down through the state of California. So just take this into context. If you have not designated the state of California as a possible target, when you just look at the size of procurement, one of the largest states in the union, right? We're comparable really to Texas as far as procurement dollars that go out. One of the numbers I like to throw out is specifically what the state of California does with small business. No other state is touching these type of numbers. Typically, state of California is over 30% procurement with small business. Now, you might say, well, 30% somewhat sounds small. Comparable to other states out there, and I'm talking about substantially sized states, substantially sized procurement, you know, they're at the 3 to 5 percentile doing business with small business, and they're scratching their head. And it's a continual basis where those other states in the union are asking California procurement, how are you guys getting this done? How is it actually, you know, working on that side? So when we talk about strategy with the state of California, understand that certifications are broken into two certifications. And this is a whole, I know some of you may be familiar with the Prop 209 situation that's going on currently in the state of California. This may change, you know, and I don't want to get into a political discussion whatsoever, but as of now, there are two certifications for the state of California: small business and disabled veteran business enterprise. Those are the two that the state of California looks at attempting to obtain their small business contracting goals, which is at 30%. And they're typically exceeding those numbers, which is actually phenomenal when you start looking at this. So this is why we wanted to talk about state of California and understanding, listen, state of California is a viable target for you. It's another behemoth procurement system, but it is not that bad of a system, in all honesty, from our experience, gaining some traction on this side. And there's some good methods within state of California procurement that I want you to understand. So here's where we're going to start. First bullet point is OBAS, so Office of Business and Acquisition Services. What this is going to do, it's going to give you a general understanding of how they derive at some of their small business goals, what departments in the state of California exceed their goals, who doesn't exceed their goals, what their methods of outreach are, how are they finding specific small businesses, and specifically, what are they doing with departments that aren't meeting their goals, which this is great when you start looking at, if any of you have ever been to the SARA Awards or have heard of the SARA Awards. So SARA, it's an acronym, State Agency Recognition Awards. Now this is great. This is an award ceremony they have every year, state of California, where they pat themselves on the back, specifically looking at the goals that they've reached and exceeded. And when you start going to this, you start actually pulling out some of that data, you're going to see some astronomical numbers. I can tell you Department of Corrections is close to 70% small business spend. Now, when you look at Department of Corrections and you think of all the prisons within the state, all of the training that they have, all of the situations, the outreach that they have, and when they're close to 70%, for the most part, in the majority of their procurement, Again, that's an astronomical number where it's a total head scratcher, right? Where you're going, goodness gracious, how are these people actually making that? What OVAS is going to do, it's going to give you the information of how they're actually conducting that, where they're going to say, well, listen, we know of 20 suppliers within a 40-mile radius of a particular region in the southern region that they're contracting with, who's competitive, who bid on particular contracts, whatever the case may be. So this is where you're going to get a general understanding of what they're doing on the OVAS side. So the second bullet point, DGS, Department of General Services. So you understanding state procurement, state of California procurement. Department of General Services is the hub of procurement for the entire state. All of the procurement for the state of California comes out of DGS. There's one exception with Caltrans. So that you understand this, what occurred, this is probably quite a few years ago. At some point, Caltrans and DGS, that procurement came out of the same office. Caltrans worked their procurement so well and they exceeded their numbers on a regular basis, they made a case to the governor's office and said, listen, we would want to run our own procurement. So that happened for a while where you had two entities. Caltrans just ran their own procurement, DGS ran their procurement. New website came out in Cali Procure. Now all of that information is combined, which is good. I've got some issues with Cali Procure and how that website is utilized and the information on there. Sometimes it's a little bit stale, sometimes it's a little bit clunky on how it works, but all the data is there. It's understanding how to mine all that data. So at the end of the day, DGS, they're going to give you a general procurement methodology. What are the methods out there? And some of the things that you've got to watch for, there are no set-asides in state of California. There are specific goals or mandates that have to be met. So understand for the majority of procurement that comes out, 3% of that contract is going to go to a DVBE contractor, Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise contractor, 3%. There are other mandates out there ranging anywhere from 5 to 30% that is mandated specifically with small business. Now, understand that, take that in somewhat and start thinking about, okay, when I look at these percentages, what I'm going to do is when I see what the spend is, and we'll talk about this on this next slide, when I see what the spend is, I'm going to understand, okay, $100 million, 30% of that is going towards small business, or small businesses are actually closing 30% of that. That's going to give you a context, right? Where you go, well, it's not all large businesses that are just getting all these contracts specifically in the state of California. So understand that. And then there's some other methods specifically within DGS. Let me throw this out at you that you'll see on this website. It'll be a small business option. Meaning this, let's say that you've identified Department of Real Estate for the state of California is a target of yours. You conduct marketing, you conduct research, you conduct training, whatever the case is, but you've identified Department of Real Estate as a specific target. Now you reach out to them, there are specific advocates that you start with, contract analysts within that department that you're able to find specifically on this website. There's an advocate for every department in the state of California. So you'll be able to find that specifically at DGS. So understand that small business option is this. When that contract official, that contract analyst says, well, listen, we have a procurement that's $150,000. Now, the small business option is under $250,000 right now. It's gone through a couple cycles. They're trying to raise that to $500,000, but right now, for our conversation's sake, it's under $250,000. But let's say that Department of Real Estate has a procurement for $150,000. What their process is this, and you're speaking to that individual and you're saying, listen, I do exactly what you're looking to procure. Okay, well, we have to have some type of competitive process. The small business option is this. For that $150,000, okay, give me your price. I've had some correspondence with you. I see what you do. This is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, here's my price. As the contracting official, all I need to do is make a phone call to another supplier and just ask for a quote. Get the quote. Hey, what do you know? Yeah, you're 3 times higher than what I'm looking for. Perfect. That procurement, that contract goes directly to you as the small business option. Same thing happens on the DBB side. So the reality is this on the strategy side. Once you get some traction with state of California, the bottom line is your job, and this is something I'm going to somewhat go off on a tangent real quick, and understanding state of California procurement. And even in federal procurement, this happens. As a business development firm, this is the frustration as well as the opportunity, is that the majority of your time is going to be spent educating that contracting officer or that contract analyst what they can do. This is where it's absolutely golden that you understand procurement methodology. This is where you're going to get it. This is where you're going to say, well, Section 52, part of the FAR says this. This is exactly what you're supposed to be following. Same thing happens on the small business side with state of California, where you say, listen, you're totally viable for a small business option. It's a $200,000 contract. Why you put this out for bid and wasting time worrying about putting together an entire request for proposal, having to evaluate 20 submissions, you know, from not only large business, small business, whatever the case is. You have the opportunity to use the small business option. Being armed with that information, that is strategy right there. That is where you need to understand how procurement works on the side. And this is where you're going to start with these 2 bullet points there. Okay. Back to, or we're continuing, we're still talking about state of California and Cali Procure. I spoke about this website. This is where all the procurement is going to come out. So the next bullet point, FizCal, what this website is state of California. We're still talking about state of California. This website specifically is a research tool. This is where you're going to be able to find, this is comparable to USAspending.gov when we talked about that on the federal side. This is the state data where you're going to see where did the money go, where are the contracts specifically, who's being awarded these contracts, how often are these contracts coming out. Let's say I'm a real estate agent and I'm trying to work with Department of Real Estate, state of California. Well, a contract just came out and just got awarded. And what do you know? That contract is a 1-year contract and it's got 3-year options. So what does that tell me? Wow, I'm not going to have a chance at that for another 4 years. But understanding that, or vice versa, where you've looked at a contract on FizCal, you've researched it and you said, wow, this contract's going to expire in the next 6 months. I got to get ready. We got to make sure that I've got my internal processes ready. I've got to make sure I've got my expert personnel ready, whatever the case is. This gives you that targeted research to understand who do you focus your efforts on. So that's what FizCal is going to do for you specifically with that data. The caveat is, again, when I give you some of these data points or some of these websites to conduct the research, it's a ton of information. And you're going to go, goodness gracious, this is just voluminous. This is a situation that it's just so much data to take in. So I give this analogy all the time because when you start talking about government contracting, you're talking about behemoth situations. The analogy is, how do you eat a whale? 1 bite at a time. You absolutely have to have that mindset because it will overwhelm you. I will tell you from day one, it will overwhelm you, especially when you start about proposals, when you talk about, what they're looking for and, how large some of these RFPs are, it will definitely overwhelm you. That is the mindset that you have to have. Okay, let's just go 1 step at a time on this thing. So absolutely. Understanding specific goals for the state of California. We talked about the small business, disabled veteran business enterprise. Absolutely critical you understand that those are the 2 mechanisms that they're looking for. The majority of us fall into that small business side. DVBE, there's roughly about 1,800 deep certified DVBs within the state of California. So they're well sought after typically on a lot of procurement out there. But not to say just because you don't have that specific certification, small business certification, that's exactly where you need to be on that side. Just because of the sheer numbers that the state of California does, they just do a great job. And they're looked at, like I said, by every other state in the union, asking them how their procurement methodology actually rolls out and how they're getting that done. It's a regular question. So understand that. One thing I'm going to hit on real quick with Cali Procure, that is where you're going to register as well. So it's a one-stop shop somewhat for state of California. That's where you're going to register your business. I will put this out to you just as a direct statement. If you have problems registering your business with Cali Procure and getting registered and certified as a small business, you're going to have to somewhat sit back and say, well, maybe this isn't for me at some point, because it's very easy. I've got to tell you, Cali Procure, I mean, there may be some hiccups along the way, technical hiccups, but for the most part, it's a pretty easy process. So if you're having a lot of difficulty doing that, maybe you're going to have that conversation with the person in the mirror and say, maybe this isn't for me. That's a reality. So I just throw that out there. I like to talk about that sometimes. Sean loves when I hit on that point. So now when we start talking about actually looking at scopes of work, looking at RFPs, knowing exactly who our targets are. What we pride ourselves at our firm is really setting up systems, miniature systems that accomplish the ultimate objective, which is contract award and contract execution, right? So what I want to do is just run through this slide specifically. This is your typical proposal process that you should implement, and keep it simple. When we start talking about, when I throw terminology out to you, operations manual, things like this, project management, protocol, quality assurance, typically you sit back and you think of, you're envisioning some 3-ring binder that's, a foot thick, like, oh my gosh, 2,700 steps to this, whatever it is. Keep it simple. Use the acronym, keep it simple as possible. If it's a yellow legal notepad with bullet points on it, keep it at that. So we keep things as simplified as possible. So this is the process when you're looking at these RFPs. So let's just run through them real quick. Self-explanatory on some of these questions, but these are questions that you've got to ask yourself about your business. Can you perform specifically once you obtain the RFP? So we start at the top, obtaining the RFP. Can we perform? Does your firm meet the general requirements? Do you have any advantages, specifically operational pricing? What is your advantage on that side? Bonding and insurance and financial stability. Do you actually have that? Can you actually perform on this contract? Do you have the capital to make sure that we're running a finely tuned project on this? I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to go off on a quick tangent real quick on the financial stability and understanding, do you have the capital to actually perform on one of these contracts? One of the things that's a fallacy out there, well, it's not necessarily a fallacy, but in understanding who your targeted agencies are, is understanding what their pay process is. For the most part, if you have never had a federal contract, you typically have this mindset, or there is this fallacy out there that, wow, you don't get paid for 90 days. It's, a huge turnaround system, whatever the case is. For the most part, for most decent sized federal agencies, as a contractor, we typically get paid in under 15 days of submission of invoices, and that's electronic submission. So just know that that is out there. There's going to be some hiccups. I'm sure somebody will have a horror story. Well, I didn't get paid for, 120 days, whatever the case is. But when you dig into that, you somewhat find out, well, maybe it was your fault in the invoicing, was it not prepared the way they wanted their requirements, whatever the case is. State of California is net 45. The beauty about state of California is, as a small business, after that 45th day, you start accruing actual penalties from the state. So in other words, if they're not paying, state of California is not paying in 45 days, you're going to get penalties on top of that when you get paid, meaning they're going to pay a fee. And it's, I can share with you exactly what that process is, but it's not a ton of money. But I'm telling you, there are pain points that are. What that is that's a project management style on the state side to make sure you're getting paid correctly and on time. So those processes are out there. So understanding that, and you need to develop that when you're looking at your targets, because there's some horror stories out there. I can tell you locally, City of LA is tough, is very tough. Long cycles on payment side, but you got to know that going in. So just understand that as we go along this. So sorry for the tangent, but we come back. Resource and planning capacities. So understanding what are your resources specifically. And this is where we're talking about subcontractors. This is where we're talking about teaming agreements. This is where we're talking about joint ventures, whatever the case is. Are those resources in place? Meaning, if you get a request for proposal and you're looking at a specific scope of work and you say, listen, I can do about 60% of this. 60% is right in our wheelhouse. I know exactly, we've got the personnel to be able to provide on this. The other 40%, this is a technical part that I don't know about. That is not the time to start sending emails and making phone calls and saying, hey, can you do this? You need to have those conversations early because you need to solidify those relationships. You need to understand, hey, we're going after these particular contracts with the state or the federal government, whatever it is. This is what I need. This is what I need to understand that you can do on these particular contracts. And whether it's a memorandum of understanding, just an agreement, hey, we're going to be proposing on this, but we're going to list your resumes, your past performance. We're going to be a team on this. Having those conversations before you actually obtain a scope of work or an RFP, something along those lines, that's absolutely critical. Those are actual resources. Now you've got that relationship, you started that relationship. To try and solidify a business relationship within a week or two before submitting a proposal, it's tough because now your risk goes up, right? Because this particular relationship, what they're saying they can do. Okay, maybe they can, and I've seen their past performance, but I've never worked with them. Let's say that the project manager that I'll be working for is a nightmare. He or she is just uncooperative every step of the way. That's a nightmare contract for you. So that's where you're going to have to manage that risk. And this last bullet point here, the resource and planning, that's where that falls into. Having those resources and having that planning set. So the next step there, creating the requirements list. Understand when you're looking at these scopes, there's the requirements are there in black and white. We want you to have 2 years performance in this particular industry. We want you to be in business for 4 years. We want you to have $5 million, umbrella in insurance. You've got to have 2 key personnel. The requirements are going to be in black and white, and they're going to be listed. You need to meet these requirements. And that's the question that you're going to ask yourself. Do we meet those requirements? Do we not meet those requirements? How do we make sure this next one, let's say this one isn't an opportunity for us, how are we going to make sure we meet those requirements later on? So, self-explanatory. Read it. I know that sounds very basic, but you've got to read this entire thing. Now, when you start looking at federal proposal or federal RFPs on that side, you're going to tell me, Rene, that's 700 pages. How am I going to read all that? At some point, you're going to have to read it. There is no doubt about it. So understanding exactly what the scope, understanding exactly what they're attempting to accomplish with the scope of work. So this is where we talk about reading. Having supply and personnel read, meaning this. I don't care if you're a one-person shop, you've got to at least have a second pair of eyes to help you on this side, because the human factor is going to come into play where you need somebody else to help you. I don't care, it could be a spouse, could be a friend, could be somebody that doesn't even know anything about your industry, and you say, hey, listen, I've read through the scope of work, here's my findings on it, I need help to actually understand if I'm on the same page, if I have a cognizant strategy on this, and if this makes sense to you at some point. So the supply and personnel, in other words, typically your project managers, your key personnel who are actually going to be working on that contract, they need to make sure that they understand that scope as well, okay? And then you determine a go and no-go. In a couple slides, we're going to go through a go, no-go process. The objective at the end of the day is being able to make a decision. No matter what the criteria is, if you read through it, let's say you come up with 3 questions. Do I know who the incumbent contractor is? Can I be price competitive on this? Do I meet the requirements? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, that's a go. Same set of questions where you've answered yes, yes, no, and you decide, I don't have the past performance, I don't meet the requirements, it's time to move on. The most important thing is making that decision, being decisive about that decision, making that decision and moving on. Because what you're going to see is, specifically in the government contracting side, for the most part, and for most industries, the turnaround time or the amount of opportunities are going to far outweigh this process and being pulling back and saying, well, listen, I think I can actually get some of these resources. I think I can meet this particular requirement. It may take me a little while, but, and then you've lagged and you've set, okay, well, that's 4 or 5 days have gone by, a week's gone by. And typically for the most part, you've got about a 30-day window where it's a 30-day process once it hits the street and you're actually going to submit a proposal. That's not a strategy that we would suggest, and we don't see that it's effective whatsoever. Make a decision, move on. If you've made the decision to go, then write that proposal to its conclusion, because what will happen as well is you'll get midway or 3/4 done, and you'll sit back and you go, oh my gosh, this is just dribble. This is just, I don't know what happened, but I have not put together a clear picture of what this proposal should be. What I would challenge you to do is, you've gone that far, you made the decision to go, submit that proposal, no matter what, because the end game is you're going to get some kind of feedback. Now, you may be afraid of the feedback where they say, well, what happened? Did a 5-year-old write this? Is it in crayon? You know, whatever the case is, but you're going to get some type of feedback, a debrief, right? Where they go, hey, listen, you're so off base, I think you should think about something else. Or you're going to get, hey, I like this portion. You were good here, but you know, you lacked. I mean, you were 3 times higher in price. Your project management approach, I mean, didn't make any sense whatsoever. That at least gives you a baseline, right? Where you've taken in some information and said, okay, this is, I can start with something here. Here's a baseline. Now I know where I'm at. I know how far I've got to go. So I would just really push you to say, when you make a decision to go or to no go, follow through all the way. And adversely, if you say you're going to pass, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to lose sleep over this one, when you find one of your competitors or some other company out there, they actually got awarded on it, that's where you're sitting back going, oh my gosh, I'm 10 times better than them. How is it possible that they got that contract? I'm so jealous on that side. You got to let it go, right? And just move on. So take that into consideration as well. All right, we're going to talk about marketing material real quick. Now, I know that everybody is going to say, well, listen, there's you know, I've got the flashes, the best marketing material. People are, you know, and they have classes on, you know, designing your capability statement. It's a 4-hour class. I know I'm going to offend some people out there, but listen, that's fine. I'm not downplaying that that's important, but I'm here to tell you, a capability statement will not close you a contract. Will not close you a contract. I don't care what anybody tells me. It will absolutely not. So on the government contracting side, what we look at, putting 3 tools in your toolbox. So I'm going to run through these real quick. So a capability statement. A capability statement is a 1-page document that gets attached, it's electronically, that gets attached to emails and correspondence with contracting officers, things like this. And all it is, it's very basic. It's got what you do, what you've done in the past, what your NAICS codes are, what your certifications are. And we can provide a template on this. And I didn't put that in the presentation just for the sake of time, just because it's very basic. It's just that 1 page. Keep it to 1 page. And we'll run through that, because what the process is at some point, all that is a teaser. You talk about what you do, what you've done in the past, what your certifications are, and whoever that contracting officer, contract analyst, whoever they are, project manager, where they're interested, hey, can you send me more information? So here's the next step in the more information. What you don't want to occur is them to go to your website direct. Not to say that you don't want them on your website, but you don't want them to have to dig through specific information on your website. The next step is a statement of qualifications. This is a lengthier document. This is where you actually have resumes, your past performance, your projects, and a description of your projects, how you were better, cheaper, and faster, how you came in under time and under budget on these projects, what your expansion plan is, how many teaming relationships you have that, you know, maybe you're a $500,000 company, but you're prepared to be a $10 million company, and here's how. This is what a statement of qualifications is. This statement of qualifications, like I said, is a lengthier document, and all this is you're prepared when they ask you, when you get that email or that phone call, hey, I need some more information on you. I've got your capability statement, looks good, but can I get a little more in-depth information on you? And to have this canned up, ready to go, absolutely critical. Because you think about this. Think about sales that are lost on phone calls or emails. Hey, could I get a little bit more information on you? Sure, let me put something together. I'll get it back to you next week. When somebody tells me that, you know what's going to happen? I'm calling the next person. Hey, can you give me some information? I need some information. I need a subcontractor. Can I see that information? Absolutely. I'll send it to you right now. Boom. Or another kiss of death is, yeah, just go to our website. Okay, well, I asked for that. Now let me take a look at your website. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going, when did you design this? 10 years ago, or, whatever the case is. So understand that it's a focused approach on the government contracting side. So the third bullet here is a capabilities brief. Now, specifically with the federal government, what we would challenge you to do is have a 10-minute presentation. And here's as easy as it is. The pain point in these 3 bullets is going to be that statement of qualifications. This is going to be the longer document. All I want you to be able to do is to take that statement of qualifications and turn that into somewhat of a 10-minute presentation. Maybe you want to develop a few slides. When I say a few, like 2 to 3 on the company, exactly what you do, because there is going to come a time when you gain some traction on the government contracting side where they're going to say, hey, can you come in and talk to our project managers and give us a quick overview of your company? And you're going to say yes. You're absolutely going to say yes. But the problem is going to be is they may give you a timeline, but you may not have this timeline. So in your mind, you're thinking, wow, I've got to entertain a group of people about my company for an hour. I've got to talk for an hour on this thing and give them slides, puppet shows, and trinkets, whatever the case is. No, keep it as simple and succinct as possible, 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I guarantee you, I don't care what kind of presenter you are, people are going to be thinking, oh, I got to cut the grass when I get home. I got to do this. Or they're on a Zoom meeting and going, man, what's for breakfast? I lost you after minute 4 on this. There's nothing there. Keep it to that 10-minute side. All right. Enough said on that. We can go into that a little more detailed once you actually get into the program. Proposal preparation and process. Creating a list of requirements. We talked about this. Initiate a checklist. Self-explanatory. It relates to the requirements. Gathering supply and personnel. This is somewhat of a reiteration of the slide, a couple slides prior, exactly what you need to do. One of the bullet points that's second to last, utilize the Q&A period as fact gathering time. Question and answer period. There is always a question and answer period in the RFP process. What you need to do is use that as the fact gathering process, meaning when you see specific questions, because the typical process is this, they have a question and answer period. Okay, proposal is due on the 30th of the month. Questions are due on the 15th of the month. After all the questions get submitted on the 15th, that contracting officer releases all the questions and all the answers within a couple days, right? The day of the submission of the questions. You're going to look through those questions, and what you're going to do is you're going to be able to gain an understanding of, wow, this question right here, whoever this is in our industry, they have no idea what they're talking about in the industry. We make widgets. Why is this person talking about square boxes? They have no idea what they're talking about on that side. Or the flip side of that may be some very technical questions, and you're going to go, wow, those people know what they're doing. They've done this before. And it's going to make you a little bit nervous, especially if you're some first timers on that side and you go, wow. Here's the other side of that coin. Know that those of us who are a little more experienced on that side, we're going to know that you're looking at these questions. So we may pose some questions to somewhat throw you off. We may pose some questions to somewhat say, oh, I'm totally confident. These people who ask these questions, they have no idea what they're doing. I'm totally confident in our proposal, and I may let up. Maybe I may not be as detailed. Just understand that all this is fact gathering on the business development side. So use that as fact gathering. Listen to the requirements in the RFP. Now, we talked about proposal production. We did not go into detail on this, but this is a process that is very critical to actually gaining contracts. You need to have a grasp of technical writing and how to be able to articulate what you do, what the scope of work is, and what is your approach to that. So use the list of those requirements as an understanding of how to gauge that. Try not to go off on tangents on this side. In government contracting, specific scopes of the work, specific requirements are a direct question. Typically, when you start saying, well, listen, I have a better process or I have something out of the box that would totally be much more effective, If you're not meeting those specific requirements, you're not giving the government what they're asking for, you're typically going to be found non-responsive. And here's the reason why. I can tell you the reason why specifically within scopes of work, particular RFPs, is because those funds are specific to direct line items. In other words, if on the federal side, if Congress approves a budget for Homeland Security and they're purchasing olive, drab, green widgets, that's all that they can spend that money on specifically. They have a specific requirement, specific certifications. This is what I can do. It doesn't matter if that contracting officer or that contract analyst reads your proposal and says, wow, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Absolutely, we can do this. They're going to be handcuffed by those particular requirements. So just keep that in mind on the proposal preparation process. All right, producing the go, no go. I'm going to somewhat start running a little bit faster because I know that time is running out. I told you, Sean, that I am extremely long-winded, but we were challenged to condense this down into 1 hour. So we know we're going fast, but I'm giving you a time. We've gone through the go, no go process. Here are some of the bullet points here. Just make sure that you're asking these questions of yourself. Here's what I would challenge you not to do. You're going to read a particular RFP or you're going to have a scope and you're going to be excited and you're going to go, man, this is exactly what I can absolutely provide service or product or what they're looking for on this side. And there may be a small portion there that you're just not sure of. And you said, well, you know, we can't meet that bonding requirement or the insurance requirement. So I got to call my insurance people, got to talk to maybe a subcontractor on the side, and it somewhat lags on. What I would challenge you to do is make this a 72-hour process where you're looking at a particular RFP, particular scope, you've conducted your go, no go, and you make the decision and move on. Now, when I challenge you to that 72-hour process, that's going to linger on because you're going to say, well, no, I need to pass. I really don't, really can't provide on that. You're going to lose sleep and you're going to wake up one morning and go, no, I think I can. I think I can do it. Make the decision and move on. That is the most critical part. And we see this specifically even in medium to large businesses where this happens as well, where they say, well, no, you're right. We had a discussion about this. We went through the criteria. We only have maybe like a 40% win percentage. We're moving on. And then somebody has another idea, typically some high ranking official within the company, and they go, no, absolutely, we can do this. Let's look at it again. So make the decision and move on the go, no go process. Project management. So I'm going to gloss over this somewhat. And again, this particular component in government contracting is a huge disconnect for small business. You don't really grasp project management. And you don't have to be a certified project manager, PMP, I don't care. But understanding that you need to manage that particular contract is absolutely critical to your success. In government contracting, mistakes on contracts cost you big. Cost you big in business development, cost you big. And it's a business basic, right? You make a mistake on a contract or you make a mistake with a customer, whether it's on the private sector, whatever the case is, it's always a hit. But I'm here to tell you that if project management is not addressed specifically within government contracts, the feedback from contracting officers to other contracting officers and other agencies is absolutely detrimental. Absolutely detrimental. Because, in your mind, you think, well, the federal government, huge spend out there, 1,200 departments, whatever the case is. But the reality in government contracting, it is somewhat of a small world where they actually connect the dots to your past performance, past customers, whatever the case is, because they are mandated to do this in their reference process to actually make sure that you're going to be able to provide what you do. So again, the project management side, absolutely critical. So I give the definition of project management here, but I want to kind of go into the successful project manager must simultaneously manage the 4 basic elements. What I want you to grasp is understanding this. I don't care if you are not certified as a project manager, you have no experience. If anything, as a takeaway, understand the 4 elements of the project: resources, time, money, and most importantly, scope. So as we look at that, this is what you need to be able to grasp. You're going to understand the resources, the time, the money, and the scope, right? The 4 elements. But what the challenge is, understanding to storyboard how that contract is going to roll out. So what you do is you start at the very last day. At the very last day, the customer was as happy as I've ever seen another human being. We were under time and we were under budget. And then you start telling the story backwards and you say, okay, how does that occur? That occurs when we hit all our benchmarks. That occurs when we provided the product or the service on time. That happens with customer service, making sure that we're keeping the customer apprised on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis of exactly what the status was. That happens on the next step forward is making sure that our personnel are available, that we have backups for people who are sick or products that can't be delivered on time. We have backups for that. That happens from day one when we come into the kickoff meeting and we tell you, this is what we're going to provide, this is how we're going to provide it, and this is what we know about the industry. Here are the risks involved in our industry from our experience, and here's how we mitigate those risks. Now you see the background of this slide where it says contingency. This is the secret sauce of project management, that you've thought through and documented and articulated what is the contingency for every one of these 4 elements on that side. What that does is that conveys your expertise to the government, meaning you've looked at this and you said, okay, I know in our industry we supply, technical writing services to the Department of the Navy, and we've got 4 technical writers. My experience tells me that those 4 technical writers, 2 out of 4 may get jobs somewhere else, may get some high-paid job where, we lose those particular people. What we have is an HR policy and procedure behind them to say, we've got 4 people that we're looking at on a regular basis, and we're constantly backfilling those resumes, making sure that we've had at least an initial conversation with them and an interview, and we're ready to replace those people in a day's notice or in a 1-week turnaround time. Being that specific in your contingency, what you're doing as a project manager, you're supplying relief to that contracting officer, to that project manager on the government side to say, okay, you know what you're doing. You've thought this through. You know what the contingencies are. You know that you're going to be able to manage this thing. Here's another stark reality on the small business side. As a small business, to the government, I don't care if it's federal government, state government, utilities, counties, municipalities, you are risky. The mere fact that you are a small business, they are taking on a certain amount of risk where they say, wow, I really need this project done. I need to make sure that this project goes off without a hitch. I need to make sure that I get the right contractor for this. And it doesn't matter what your certifications are, if they get the bill and you're not going to be able to supply the product or the service, they are going to lose sleep. And that is the worst case scenario where, let's say you were the cheapest, you got awarded the contract, and after that initial kickoff meeting, they don't walk away with the encouragement and the mindset, these people know what they're doing. They've thought through this on the project management side. They've thought through all the contingencies around this, and they know exactly what they're doing and how to do it. That is your ultimate objective on the project management side. Very easy for me to say, very difficult to actually do. This is where it boils down to that day-to-day process. What process do you have set to make sure that your product or your service is being delivered on time and under budget? So enough on that. We can go on project management side quite a bit. So the next steps, I've thrown a lot out at you. So we're a couple minutes over the hour. I'll blame Sean because he took quite a bit in the very beginning. So I'm going to take the 8 minutes and blame him on that. He loves that. So the next steps is this. I've given you an overview and I've thrown a lot out at you. If you think you're ready on the government contracting side, the next steps, you sign up at the SBDC. What'll happen is you'll sign up and you'll make a note and make sure and say, hey, I'm interested in the government contracting program. And then you'll be set up with our firm, and we'll have correspondence. We'll set some meetings. We'll have some general dialogue, and we'll get an understanding of where you're at. So from there, it's somewhat full speed ahead. If we get the idea you're prepared, you're ready, or maybe whether it's a subcontracting side, or even if you need help, certification side, or you just want to learn about proposal production, okay, how do I conduct the actual data, the research on that side? That's what we're here to do, is help you understand, is this an actual viable market for your business on that side? So I've spoken pretty much for a quick hour, and we've hit on a lot of huge subjects on that side. So I don't know if we have any questions.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna jump in right now, Rene,
Sure.
if I could, and just say thanks you for such a great presentation. I learned something new every time. But I would add to not only the next steps of sign up, is also if you're watching this on YouTube and you weren't able to join us on our webinar, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow our channel. Hit that little notification bell so you get the next great Rene presentation, let's say. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording so that we can move now into the Q&A section of our webinar. And I think Mario has been monitoring the Q&A. So let's turn it over to Mario.
Hi, everybody.